Great. Should we
Let's
start?
go. Yeah, let's go. Yep.
Hello.
Everything's rolling.
Yes,
Cameras
everything's
are rolling.
Everything.
Our
All four
cameras. Yeah.
It's very professional.
Yeah.
It's very professional.
It's very professional.
Hello, welcome back to How Money Podcast. We are live from BitBlockBoom in
That's
Austin,
right.
Texas.
Yeah, we're finally doing reportage on location.
Yeah, we are. I feel like an active live news reporter. We're joined by Craig Deutsch, who's an editor at Bitcoin Magazine and also the organizer of the Asheville, North Carolina Bitcoin Meetup. We hung out last night.
Yep.
I asked if you'd be on the pod.
And now here we are.
And now here we are.
Erin's sitting on a bed.
Yep.
That's why she looks like a giant. Craig
I think I look like an angel.
Craig, yeah, okay. Craig gets the actual chair, and I'm sitting on something which I think is for luggage, possibly, with my really bright white thighs beaming.
Yeah. You want to be on video for this one, people. Isabel Fox and Duke was
production assistant.
Yeah, production. She was generous
really more
enough.
like a producer, you know? She fixed the location, you know? Yeah. This is her hotel room.
Yeah, she allowed us to use her hotel room, which was great. Because we needed a quiet spot to film and record and whatever. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. How's BitBlockBoom been for you so far?
It's great. It just started this morning, and I've been to half of a talk.
Nice.
Yeah, because I'm just hanging out with people.
Yeah, that's the way to go. I mean, we didn't get tickets because they're way too expensive, so we're just doing LobbyCon the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as much, if not more fun.
Yeah. I want to throw a Bitcoin conference where we just get a hotel and we just get rooms, and ideally we get a whole floor of rooms, and there are no events. There's no events. It's just a hangout.
I'm with you, except camping.
Oh, yeah,
camping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there is sort of a selection of Bitcoiners that like can camp and like do camp, and then there's a selection of Bitcoiners that
I'm like veal. Like I can't really like be in harsh environments.
Yeah.
Look at these thighs.
No,
are these the thighs of somebody who's ever been outside?
Showed off the thighs.
Well, we can have like a glamping option. We'll set up
a
tent.
Some yurts for glamping.
Yeah.
So I mean, we talked a lot. We already talked a lot last night because we basically hung out all last night. Yeah. But we talked about astrology. Because I'm always going to bring things back to astrology.
What were we like arguing about for like half an hour at the table?
Good question.
I don't know.
What weren't we arguing?
Like the definition of anarchy.
Definition of anarchy.
Yeah.
Because someone was saying like, oh, you can't be an anarchist and a capitalist, and you were like,
no, you can't be an anarchist and use a phone. That's basically. Yeah.
Right. That was how they boiled it down.
Yeah. And I was explaining that for me, anarchy, I consider myself an anarchist because it's my moral intuition. My moral intuition is that all forms of coercion are like wrong, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's more of like a moral, ethical argument.
It's not a practical, like, oh yeah, like without the government, everything would be great. I'm not making that argument, right? There'd be like some warlord situation pretty quick, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Authoritarian hierarchies.
Yeah.
Right, that was kind of what it was about, is like that there's no removing hierarchies.
But I think that
which I think is true.
Yeah, but I think
on a big scale.
But I think that the like anarchy is no hierarchy is just like a dumb definition.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, so that's why we got into it.
That's why we got into it. Yeah. It was heated, people. It was heated.
It is funny being around Bitcoiners because like usually amongst like normies, I'm the most like obnoxiously opinionated person in a conversation, but with Bitcoiners, like I am the mediator.
You're a diplomat.
Yeah. It's insane.
It gets really heated. Lots of opinions.
Yeah.
Lots of disagreeableness.
I'm trying to think of like what argument among Bitcoiners is the most tired. But I don't know.
For me, it's the maximalism argument. What does it mean to be a maximalist?
Right. What do people argue about? What do people say about that? I mean, this is a pro since we're at a maxi conference.
Yeah, that's true. This is the maxi conference.
Yeah,
I think it's about the level of toxicity needed. So, what does it mean to be a Bitcoiner where you are also like against shitcoins, or how against altcoins should you be, and how like vehemently against it. So do you need to like yell at people and tell them they're idiots for being into Ethereum, or should you let them figure that out on their own? Should you just lead by example, or is it like really important to call out scams?
Right.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it's important to bring attention to it, but I think going back to the coercion piece, it's like people are going to have to learn themselves. So
Yeah.
you can't really force them to do things. They're just going to have to learn, and sometimes the fastest way to learn is being burned.
Yeah. This is sort of like Mark's thing too, which is like, what is more maximalism? Like, you don't need all that toxicity that's just going to push people away. It's like, hey, come over here. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I feel like I come from a different perspective. We did a whole episode about Bitcoin maximalism at one point where we kind of like dissected like what are the parts of it that are like good and bad and toxic and not. And I think like, I feel like when people talk about toxic maxis, they're talking from this perspective of like, you're already sort of a crypto person. It's just, are you only a Bitcoiner or are you like into crypto or whatever? But for me, like most people that I interact with outside of Bitcoiners hate crypto.
Yeah.
Like they're like, crypto is a scam, it sucks. And so from my perspective, it's really helpful to be like, no, they are scams except Bitcoin. Because I think people just like put Bitcoin under the umbrella of all crypto. And like a lot of people just hate crypto that aren't in it, you know?
Yeah.
So to some extent, I think like Bitcoiners like removing themselves from the crypto ecosystem is actually kind of helpful for Bitcoin like being branded to normies, basically. Because they're just like, oh, crypto's a scam. It's like a bunch of like people doing Ponzi schemes and trying to get rich quick, like, and they think Bitcoin's a part of that too.
Yeah, I think the Bitcoin not crypto or Bitcoin not blockchain is, to me, the most important type of Bitcoin maximalism.
100%.
Where you can help educate people about the importance of and the distinction between the two. But I don't think that being rude or mean to people is like the route that's going to convince anybody.
It just doesn't work. And also it's not fun. It's not fun to have conflict with people.
It's not cool.
Yeah. It's pretty cringe.
It's pretty cringe.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's like any political movement. It's like, I don't know. I feel like that sort of like toxic Bitcoin maxi, it's like they act like SJ-dubs, you know?
SJ-dubs. SJW Bush.
They do.
Yeah, it's just like it's like, as opposed to I support the current thing, it's just like I oppose the current thing. And
exactly.
it's like just as bad. It's just the pendulum's on the other side.
Yeah, but it is, I mean, it's nice like going to a Bitcoin maxi conference and talk, and I do like the maxis, you know?
Yeah.
But
I mean, Bitcoiners are really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the toxic maxis, they're kind of fun. They're like these like carnival, barkers. You know, like, Bitcoin, cool, I see you. You know,
it's such a small minority of people that are actually like that in person.
Yeah,
and I think it's just like a handful of influencer types that really take that. The ego plays a lot into that, and so they got attention for being really mean and harsh.
And then that's just their shtick. Yeah. They're like, that's how I get engagement on Twitter. So I'm just doing my shtick. I'm like reply guying and Bitcoin maxing it up and like,
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like even just interacting with people here in person versus like what they're like on Twitter is like, it's a world of different. I mean, you're not on Twitter much, right?
I am on Twitter too much, but I don't post a ton.
You're not like, trying to...
I took it off my phone. That's been helpful.
Yeah, that's good. You can't have that shit on your phone. Yeah. I have it on my phone. It needs to go away.
Yeah.
I'll re-download it every now and then. Like, it's on my phone right now during the conference.
Same.
But yeah, it's better for my mental health to not have it on my phone.
It's really crazy how much of a difference it makes, like whether or not something is in your pocket or not. Right? Like, I can just reach for Twitter. It's in my fucking pocket. It's a huge difference from like having to open a browser on your computer or even opening a browser on your phone. It's like all of a sudden there's this like piece of candy and you can feel it there and you want to grab it.
I mean, it's the same brain effect, right? It's like a hit of dopamine.
Yeah, no, I do that all the time. Like if I'm like bored or if I like don't want to if I'm trying to distract myself, it's like just being able to be like open Twitter notifications, open like it's so I definitely I mean I think like Twitter also incentivized like beyond just like kind of the dopamine like personal effect. I think like Twitter does incentivize a style of like toxic maximalist culture that like people just can't act like that in person. Like it's just you can't go to a conference and have people act like they do on Twitter. It's not gonna work.
No, but it is really nice to be at a conference that is only for Bitcoiners. It's a very different energy. I mean, what's really fun for me going to conferences and events is a lot of times I'm not even talking about Bitcoin with people. We just already have that in common. So it's like a shared value and that is just the base layer of our connection. And we do talk about Bitcoin too, but it's we can easily just move past that and talk about other interesting life things.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, so what's your experience with, so you run the, like, Asheville Bitcoin meetup.
Oh, yeah. Tell us how what kind of meetup is it? When did it start? How did you start it?
Yeah, I want to know the story.
Yeah.
So actually, I flew out to Austin last year for a BitDevs as my first Bitcoin
Like
meetup.
Austin BitDevs.
Yes,
Yeah.
Austin BitDevs. Yeah. It was like August, maybe. I had FOMO from missing Miami in 2021. And I came out, I was trying to get a job in the industry, and somebody asked me, like, well, what's your proof of work for Bitcoin? Like, what do you do? Have you written articles? Have you started a meetup? Do you attend a meetup? Things like that. And so I kind of dove headfirst into how can I participate in this space. And so I started the Asheville meetup.
That's so cool.
It started
were there any meetups, other meetups in Bitcoin in Asheville when you started it?
Yeah, so I flew, when I got home, I looked up what meetups were happening, and there was a crypto meetup at a popular bar in downtown Asheville. Asheville's known as Beer City. There's tons of good beer, and this crypto meetup was like at the most popular bar in town. So it was just packed. You couldn't hear anybody. There was not even discussion about crypto, like at all, which is not what I wanted to talk about. But I was like, are we going to talk about this stuff, right, like any of it, like Bitcoin? And basically, I just realized I needed to start my own meetup. So first I started it through an email list of people who I knew were interested, but then I finally just made a meetup page.
That's dope.
And the meetup page is when it really started taking off.
What was it like? Like, I mean, the first meetup, like how many people attended? How did you get it to grow?
Yeah. And then when was the first meetup?
So the first meetup ended up being in like November or October. And
of this like a year ago, almost a year ago?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I really like to dig into these details because I think people need to understand, like, starting a meetup isn't a big deal. You just, like, it's just a thing. You just do it. You get people to show up. Like, I really want people to also, if they live in a place that there's no good meetup or they want to have a different kind of Bitcoin meetup, they can just do it, you know?
Yeah, it really doesn't take much. Like, it just takes a meetup event page. The thing that was holding me back is I didn't want to spend like $60 on like a 6-month membership for Meetup. But I finally just bit the bullet and did it. And it took time to figure out the schedule and the consistency and what people wanted. So I wanted to teach people about Bitcoin. I used to be a teacher, so I wanted to like educate.
Right. What did you teach?
Taught second grade.
Oh, cool.
So little
yeah.
kids,
That's dope.
But it really shifted. So first I did once a month, and I was like, I'm going to have a topic. And I did it one time, and I realized I was hungry to interact with more Bitcoiners. So I was like, let's do it every week. And then every week was too much for me to plan and come up with a topic and still have my life. And so what ended up happening is I would have I'd have one meetup a month where it was like educational, and then it was just like every week of social time.
Yeah.
People want to just hang out.
People want to hang out. Yeah, that's why it's like you're giving the people what they want. They want an excuse to show up and hang out.
Yeah, it was perfect. Like, so I was doing once a week, and then I had another child. I actually did get a job in the Bitcoin industry.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. So I switched to every other week, and that's been really helpful for me. And the group actually still meets weekly.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah, they meet without me. I think that's when people that are interested in crypto talk about other stuff.
They're like, he's not around.
Yeah, exactly.
Dad's gone.
I keep it like a very seriously with Bitcoin only. Yeah, but so they're meeting every week, but every other week is when there's an event page.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's definitely like key. I think I tend to also overdo things a little bit in terms of like signing up for too much or being like, oh, I'm going to do this like really all the time. And it's like, to people who are thinking about doing it, I'd say do it the other way. Be like, start it once a month, you know, and then if you want to do it more, if you feel like you can, then go up. You know?
Yeah, the consistency part was the biggest part.
Yeah.
Doing it a regular time where it was like always the first Thursday of every month.
Right.
That way people just get into the habit and routine of going repeatedly. And now it's like people who are in the know can still go every week.
Right.
It's just not public knowledge that it's every week.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Little alpha leak right here.
Yeah.
So how big is like the regular group that comes?
My group is hilarious. So the regular group, we have probably about 8 core members, and some of them are coming from like an hour away.
Damn.
One person comes from Greenville. It's like an hour and a half. Every I don't know if he's coming every week, but I think so. I have a handful of people that don't own Bitcoin and just like the community and just are like interested but don't feel ready yet to like jump in. I'm like, just
that's so
$10
funny.
Just get a little bit.
They're
of
into it enough to come to a weekly thing, but not to just like buy.
Just the way to get people to do it is like buy them a beer and be like, you can pay me back with Bitcoin. Oh, you don't have a wallet? Like, well,
or they buy you a beer and you pay them back.
I pay my hairdresser in Bitcoin.
Nice.
With Lightning.
Yeah. I mean,
barber. I have a barber, not a hairdresser.
Oh, there's some dye in there, maybe. We like have onboarded them. Like they have a wallet. I mean, the other funny part about my group is they all hold their own keys, and they've always have. Like
sick.
From the first meetup, I was like, all right, who holds their own keys for real? And they're like, oh, none of them like kept their stuff on Coinbase or anything.
Oh wow.
They all hold their own keys. But they're not technical. They don't want to use Bitcoin besides hodling. They don't want to run a node. They don't care about that stuff. They just hold their own keys and that's it.
So what would you say so we interviewed Sid. I don't know if you've heard of Sid.
Yeah, he came to our meetup.
Okay, I wasn't sure if he made it because I know he didn't go all the way up to the Northeast, but I thought he had kind of gone through there. So we interviewed Sid. Sid finished his road trip after going to all those Bitcoin meetups in San Francisco, and so we interviewed him when he was in San Francisco. And the conversation we were having with him was about sort of the variation of Bitcoiners, political ideologies, culture, Bitcoin culture, how does it change? So I'm curious, I think the Bay Area Bitcoiner community is very unique. It's sort of a little bit more progressive. It's a little more techie too, obviously, in San Francisco.
I think we got some chairs maybe.
Oh, okay. Pause.
We're back. We have
still recording.
Yeah, it's all
still recording.
It's also
You'll notice some chairs appeared in the background. Room service was kind to bring us some chairs.
We asked for chairs and then they didn't come, so then we've set up this way. Now we're set.
We're cozy.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But I was talking about I
was going to say that Bay Area Bitcoiners is unique because it's multiple. Most of the Bitcoin meetups in the Bay Area happen under the same meetup group. There's the Bay Area Bitcoiners meetup group, and then there's they meet in the South Bay, the Peninsula, the East Bay, San Francisco, and
North Bay.
Marin. Yeah, North Bay.
Yeah.
So there's at least 5 meetups per month in different locations in the Bay Area. I think SF maybe meets twice a month.
Yeah, there's at least one meetup a week.
That's right.
How many people are attending those meetups?
I'm actually not, so I haven't gone to some of the ones that are not geographic. I want to.
We go to the East Bay
and
meetup and the SF meetup. Yeah.
And I would say, the East Bay meetup is once a month and it's huge.
It's
there's
huge.
probably 20 to 30.
Could be 20 to 30. Yeah, I think so.
It's usually several tables over the course of the whole night. I think.
Yeah. And the SF meetup winds up being 10 to 20 maybe.
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating because the core group of mine is about 8 to 10 people. But typically we're getting 14 people that come, and sometimes they come just once and then never come back again, and sometimes they come a couple times or just sporadically. So it actually seems at least similar in size to the one meetup.
Yeah.
So, but so the people that come to your meetup, they have their own keys. They don't hold stuff on exchanges, but they're also not necessarily trying to spend or use Bitcoin. Why are they into Bitcoin? What is the kind of vibe of the Asheville Bitcoin community?
So there's a few different types of people. There's people that are aware of ESG narrative and are against that and are interested in medical freedom, and so
medical freedom is kind of popping off right now.
Yeah, and I think Asheville.
That phrasing, I'm sorry.
It's funny because Asheville is very liberal, so there's it's polarized as it is in a lot of places.
I guess medical freedom is actually kind of code for anti-COVID vax, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But I think it extends from there.
Yeah.
It extends into birth and into vaccines in general and informed consent as opposed to just being mandated to do something.
Yeah.
So we have people that are against that, they're for medical freedom, against mandates, and see how Bitcoin fits into that picture. We're starting to see how Bitcoin can fit into that picture of sovereignty and freedom and personal and self-responsibility.
That's cool.
Then we have some liberal Bitcoiners who like the idea of a public ledger. One of our members is very adamant about basically having addresses doxed to your own personal account because he's saying, I'm willing to pay the taxes that I should be paying and I want to, as long as Mitch McConnell does it. And so he wants people to be everything to be laid
full
out. Full doxed, everything.
Full dystopia.
Yeah, I'm not on that same camp. But it's
nice that you guys can coexist.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And then we have people that don't even own Bitcoin. We have a few older members. People always joke about Bitcoin meetups and conferences being a bunch of guys. Mm-hmm. I have more older women in my meetup group than any other demographic.
Older women are based.
Yeah.
Older women are based.
Yeah.
It's true.
Just to tell a quick funny story about Captain Sid, and it will give you a picture of my meetup group. So he came through town on a day that's not our usual meetup, mm-hmm. and we held an impromptu event for him. And I had to leave to go help my wife with our daughter, and as I was leaving, I saw two of the members drive up. And I was like, oh, great. More people are here for Sid. Like, that would be so nice for him to, feel more welcome since I have to leave in the middle of this. I come to find out later, they didn't know there was a meetup going on, and they were high on mushrooms. And so, they showed up, and they're like, oh, there's our group. And I was like, that was so typical of my little quirky meetup group.
That's so dope. Cute.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Bitcoiners are a special breed.
Yes.
It is kind of weird though, as you were saying, it sounds like your meetup's pretty diverse. I feel like the Bay Area meetups are pretty, obviously it's mostly dudes, but not noticeably. Yeah. But then being here at BitBlockBoom, I'm
BitBlockBoom is a sausage.
It is an absolute sausage fest.
It is the worst gender ratio I have ever seen in any event.
You guys don't go to fish concerts then.
Okay. Really? Fish concerts are a sausage?
It's pretty similar.
Okay.
I'd say.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's just because the most, maybe it's that there's, I don't know, people who work in Bitcoin are mostly men. But, right. Enthusiasts or just, general...
Yeah. Home birth enthusiasts.
Yeah.
All men. Women are give me the epidural.
Hi, lady.
Good for her. No, it is kind of weird. Yeah, I'm struggling to figure out exactly why that is. That the meetup culture I found has been pretty diverse.
I think because BitBlockBoom is specifically a maxi, personal responsibility. Not that women aren't into personal responsibility, but a lot of men are more into the we're gonna have a homestead and we're gonna farm. You're
I think it's the tech.
The tech.
I think it's the tech stuff. Because
interesting. I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just think that's the part that feels more difficult to approach for anybody. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's some nerdy guys out there that are really interested in technical stuff and want to learn that, and that's why it feels more approachable for them.
Right. Yeah.
And for women, it just seems fewer are interested in the tech piece. At least in Asheville, in my circle, it seems like more people are. Equally, men and women are equally interested in sovereignty and personal responsibility and things like that, but not as it relates to technical.
Yeah.
So if Bitcoin wasn't digital, which is, that's one of the things that makes it what it is, then I think it's possible they would be interested.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true because I feel like the sort of sovereignty, the political, societal sort of implications of Bitcoin that men and women are both interested in that. But I agree. I think these kind of conferences often tend to be dominated by people who work in Bitcoin, which is going to be either technical or financial or whatever.
But this strikes me as a pretty non-technical conference.
That's true, but I think it's Bitcoin in general.
Right.
And so, and you to want to go to a conference, you need to want to spend a bunch of money to go hang out. And if it's already going to be a bunch of dudes, what's so appealing to do that?
Yeah.
So I think there's many men here that are here without their
Talk
wives
to dudes or find a husband. Those are the two options.
Seems like a good plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely weird. It's I guess I should have expected this.
It just means that you both have a mission to get more women at Bitcoin conferences.
Yeah.
If your groups are more diverse in demographics, then.
Yeah, I think in this podcast in general, obviously we do talk about technical things, that's more of Casey's specialty, but also, you're very opinionated about political and societal things, so we can galaxy brain about capitalism or whatever. Yeah. But I think that side of, the technical stuff for me, I'm I don't know. I don't really give a shit.
You're just it works. That's good enough.
Yeah, I trust Casey.
I think that's going to be the case for most people, though.
Yeah, that's
how people engage with technology. They don't know how their phones work. They don't need to, right? You don't need to be a car mechanic. right? To drive a car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everybody sends emails. Most people don't know how it works.
Yeah.
Same with the internet.
Yeah. It's a network of networks. Okay, so there's okay.
But that's like, I mean, it's like, okay, like the internet analogy. It's like, yeah, I don't know anything about how the internet works, but I could talk forever about internet
things
culture
on the
or
internet,
the things that like the internet has led to or how it's changed us or whatever. Like, to me, that's what's interesting about Bitcoin is like, whoa, this has the potential and I think will fundamentally change society.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. That's interesting.
It's an interesting observation that as Bitcoin moves, it'll always remain in the technical sphere. But when it starts moving into the social, cultural, political sphere more and more, that's when kind of everybody gets interested in it. Because everybody has opinions about politics, everybody has opinions about culture, everybody has opinions, broadly speaking, about economic matters.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting there. I mean, it seems to me that there's more women at this event than there were last year. The ratio might seem better.
Well, so
like,
there's one... This year Aaron came, so now the gender ratio
I know,
doubled.
yeah. I mean, it's 33% in this room.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's getting better, I guess. We also wanted to talk about your Bitcoin board game.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Which I heard a little bit about, but I want you to give like the whole spiel.
Sure.
Like, so how'd you come up with the idea? What's like the process been?
Yeah, I created an activity. I used to be an educator, and I created a lesson to teach people at my meetups, which was people would get like I would assign them a pseudonymous like address, like M1 was like the minor one, and somebody would be M2, and they would each get a die. Mm-hmm. And everybody who was participating would get a paper ledger.
Oh, awesome.
And they would have to keep track. So the people participating would roll this die, then whoever got below a certain number, the target number, would have found a block.
Yep.
And I would like hand them Bitcoin. And my role in the game was just to be the code being executed. I wasn't like leading it or anything.
Execute me, daddy.
So everybody would keep track of the Bitcoin, and that was like flowing in the game. And then I would have people join on and say like, okay, this person is not technical, but they want this like digital commodity thing. They're going to just buy some from the miner. And so what would happen is like, so the Bitcoin would be mined, it would move around, everybody would keep track, and then I would sneak somebody some wooden token Bitcoin and say, okay, now this person spends their 10 Bitcoin to that person, and somebody would go, wait a second, they don't have 10 Bitcoin, they only have 8 Bitcoin. And then I'm like, wow, now you know how to like run
For the people listening, this is incredible. This is amazing. Yeah.
Like, this is why you run a node. No government did this, just like somebody and like just Joe Schmo over here like was able to check and make sure that this supply stayed
That's
the same.
super cool.
And so then that would just be it. And people would like get how mining
Don't
works.
accept any wooden nickels. Don't accept any wooden Bitcoin.
And so like it taught a lot of lessons. It taught the halving, it taught nodes, it taught mining as not solving complex math problems, but it being like a lottery.
Being a degenerate rolling a dice and die in a dark room.
Exactly. It taught difficulty adjustment because I would add miners and then the target would get lower. So it taught all sorts of stuff. And then I went to a conference and saw Shamory, and I was like, maybe I can make this educational activity into a game.
One just thought really quick. Have you written up a blog post about doing that?
Well, so I thought I can get to that too.
Yeah.
So I was like, how can I make this into a game? And I racked my brain, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I made like a lesson plan to like open source it, and I posted it online, and I said, here you go, everybody, here's like this activity to teach people how Bitcoin works. Here's all the things you need. I mean, I did it like a lesson plan.
Yeah.
So anybody could just look at it, it told you the materials you needed, it gave you the ledgers. And immediately I had my friend who actually I met at BitBlockBoom reach out to me and say, whoa, like, take this down, you should make this into a board game. And like, I didn't even say that was the plan originally. I just said, I'm open sourcing this. And so I was like, I don't know what to do. And he kind of spit out some ideas, and it was enough that I like pulled down the post and then started workshopping how to make it into a game.
I think you should put the post back up, because I think that the one, it's like super useful, but then two, the feedback you would get from the post. And also I think that probably the way that it's going to be done at a meetup, what that lesson plan is going to be very different from the board game. So it's not like you'll cannibalize.
It's very different. And I've led it since I've worked on the board game, and the board game has shifted so much to make sure there's a balance of fun and strategy. So there's some things that are not quite as true to Bitcoin from like an educational perspective, but I'm getting there.
Yeah.
So like I will put it back up, and I'm just not quite there yet. And also what I found is I'm not sure how many people could lead an activity well. That's something that people are just not good at, at teaching in general.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think this ties into a lot of things. I mean, I've done this thing that I call craft store Bitcoin a few times, which is I get supplies from Michael's craft store, and I try to do activities about Bitcoins. Like the main one is the UTXO set. And we have these little like rounds of cardboard, and we write the address and the money on it, and we like process transactions by adding and removing these rounds from the UTXO set.
That's cool.
And then also you should know Lisa Nega, Nifty Nay on Twitter. She does the world famous Bitcoin live action role playing event where they like calculate SHA-256 on like hand crank calculators, and like they tie threads to like blocks and stuff. I think it's a really like, this is a whole very interesting space of like Bitcoin education and making it tangible for people who, you know, the abstract ideas are just going to kind of bounce off them. But then once they have something to look at or interact with, it's going to be real for them.
Yeah, I've done the LARP, and it was really fun, and it was really chaotic and crazy. And I was like, hey, is it okay if I give you some feedback on it? Because in the second block, something got messed up, and it basically just ruined the whole chain from that, because the second block was invalid, but then we were all doing work on top of the second block. And so I gave her feedback, and she was like, yeah, I'm not going to add any of that stuff. I was like, but this will be like, you could have all these teachable moments in there. And she was like, no, it's just decentralized. Like, it just is happening after I send you off. It's going on. I was like, okay, that's fair.
Like the situation that happened, it's kind of like a bug in Bitcoin Core. And the question becomes like, oh, you made this invalid block like 100 blocks ago. Like, what do? Do you like roll back the chain? Do you try to fix it going forward?
Yeah. And so that's basically, I was like, use that as a teachable moment. And she was like, yeah, no, I just send you off and you're doing it. No. I also have I have a lightning activity that I haven't done with people, but it's basically to teach about liquidity, where I have people like open a channel by like stringing beads on a lanyard string, and then like holding that with a clip, and so it's like it demonstrates liquidity and routing and things like that.
How like on a channel, you know, you have a fixed amount of funds in the channel, and they're like beads on a string, and they can be either on my side, in which case I can send, or on the other side, in which case I can receive. But if they're like if there's none on my side, I can't send, and if there's none on the other side, I can't receive.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's another just like educational activity that I'm working on. But the game, going back to the game, so at this point I made a prototype trying to get sponsorships. I brought it to Miami, and we're in a bear market. Nobody was ready to sponsor me.
Oh, really?
Rick from Crypto Cloaks he just heard what I was doing, and he was like, yes, I will sponsor your game. Dope. So that's really awesome. Yeah. I mean, the first goal of the game is Bitcoin education through fun and play and strategy. Yeah. And then the second goal is building out the Bitcoin ecosystems.
Oh man, if you could make it, I mean, if there was like lesson plans that teachers could use, if teachers could be like, I think it's important for my kids to learn about Bitcoin, and then they could do with a bunch of 6-year-olds, you know, rolling dice.
The financial literacy club after school.
Absolutely.
I mean, it needs to happen.
It needs to happen.
Yeah. So the game right now is back in like the design phase, and I brought it to the conference hopefully to test it out with some people and play, and then once I feel like it's more ready, I'm going to go back to try to get more sponsorships. Cool.
Wait, so you have it here?
I do have it here.
We should
If you ever need feedback on any technical details, feel free to ping me anytime with any amount of like rambling, long questions, whatever.
He'll ramble back.
Yeah, I'll ramble back. Yeah.
Cool.
So so you were a teacher,
and that's kind of where this came from. You're like teaching these like little kids, and Bitcoiners are basically big little kids, and you're like, how do I teach these big little kids about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, people learn by doing.
Yeah.
And it is one thing to teach people how to set up a Moon wallet and receive and send Bitcoin. Like that's really needed, but a lot of people just don't know. They want to know how it works because there's money involved. So like email, you didn't have to like tell them the back end of what's going on in email because there's no money involved.
There's no risk.
There's no risk.
Send an email and maybe you'll get some emails back. It's not like put some money into this.
Right. Yeah. And so that part is where I felt like it was the space was lacking. And I think that there's actually still a lot of room for growth in education. I mean, there's tons of YouTube videos. There's tons of tutorials. There's a lot of articles out there, but it's the hands-on part that is missing. I mean.
Yeah.
And so that's what people need, is they need to be walked through how it works for now.
Right.
Eventually people are just going to be using it because it's easy.
Yeah.
But we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. And there's always going to be a need for education. People want to get deep into it. And one thing that I think is great about Bitcoin, like I think the amazing thing about Bitcoin is like, people are like, wow, Bitcoin is really complicated. It has all these complicated rules. It's very technical. But then compare the Bitcoin network to the financial system and to how money gets printed. Money in the US gets printed in this like insane dance where the mint or something like issues debt, which is then like lent to Congress, who then like gives it to another institution that like actually like writes the checks on their behalf. It's crazy. I've read how it works like multiple times. I cannot even explain to you the basic function about how the government like allows money to enter the economy. And then in these like traditional systems, at many points of the process, essentially what you have is you have discretion. One person or some small group of people makes a decision, and they can make whatever kind of decision they want in that moment. More money, less money, more regulation, less regulation, cut these people out of the financial system, allow other people into the financial system. And so their decisions are kind of random. So you have to, explaining it to somebody, you have to go like, okay, well, we get to this point, and then like, you know, the you know, whatever of the exchequer like decides what they're going to do next. But then Bitcoin is algorithmic. It's deterministic. It operates in it with a fixed set of rules. There is no discretion. You have absolute discretion over how you spend your own Bitcoin, but no discretion over the rules of the system. And that makes it teachable. Unlike getting to this place and you're like, yeah, I guess then the president signs a bill, and then we figure out how much new money is pumped into the economy, right? There aren't these points of discretion in the system, which is like cool and teachable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that is so interesting to Bitcoiners, is that there is a very clear, fixed set of rules and issuance in the Bitcoin supply, and it makes sense because it is formulaic and laid out and auditable.
Yeah, I mean, I think like most people who are not interested in money, Bitcoin, whatever, like, oh, money's fake, I can't, like, whatever, and they're right.
They're right. Yeah, why should I learn about it?
Yeah. So it is kind of nice to, I think that sort of like element of, I mean, the craft store Bitcoin stuff that you've done, and then like, it sounds like your activities, like just making it tangible and real for people where it's like, oh, it's literally this simple. Oh, and there's these checks here. We don't need this like sort of trust in whatever like authority to determine this.
I mean, it's fascinating though, because even when I do that activity with people, it's oftentimes people who have never thought about money. So even the activity, which is very simplified, is still, they're like, wait, what's going on here? And as somebody who understands Bitcoin pretty well, it makes sense to me. But even for these people who've they just never thought about money at all. And they just use it and that's it. And so it's still complicated for them, because comparatively to just like no thinking at all, thinking about
a little bit.
Too much.
It's crazy that money is like on one side of every transaction that everybody does in their entire life, right? They're always trading something for money, or they're giving something for money, or they're getting something for money. And nobody thinks about like where it comes from, how it works. I was kind of skeptical about like the fix the money. I'm getting less skeptical about on the fix the money, fix the world idea. Like I actually think that like, I'm like, I think maybe like Bitcoin does fix this. You know?
Yeah, I mean, what percentage of the world, like we were talking.
Now you're throwing my argument back in my face.
No, I agree with you. It's like, sometimes I'm like, fix Bitcoin, like that's going to fix like 50% of the world problems. And then sometimes I'm like, who knows?
Well, I listened on my flight over here. I listened to Lynn Alden's article. Guy Swan read Lynn Alden's article about Lightning, and she makes a point in there and says nobody, when the smartphone was announced, when the Apple iPhone was announced, nobody thought, wow, this is really going to disrupt the taxi industry in a decade from now. I think that's kind of where we are with Bitcoin. Like, we don't even know what it's going to do in 10 years. And so that's what, to me, that's what's super fun, is like, you get to just like, what if it does this? What if it does that?
Yeah.
So Fix the Money, Fix the World is like the most simplified version of like,
Yeah.
who knows what's going to happen in 10 years, but this is going to change everything.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. And that's why I like the societal and political implications.
Right.
I'm like, let's galaxy brain about changing the world.
Yeah.
But that's great. I'm curious. So like, you were a teacher and now you're an editor at Bitcoin Magazine. How did that transition happen?
So COVID gave me an excuse to switch careers. Basically.
Were you teaching up until like COVID?
I was teaching up until COVID.
Oh wow, okay, yeah. At a public school, at a private school?
A private school, like a holistically minded private school.
Right.
So it's like
farm
a hippie,
raised children.
School, and it had been, it had been
grown.
trending towards like wokeism, and I for a while was like, I would consider myself progressive, and I like to say that Bitcoin opened my eyes and COVID radicalized me.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I got into Bitcoin in 2017, and I even at the end, like during Euphoria, is like when I got in, and so it crashed, and I was like, oh wait, I thought this was going to change the world, and I put all my money into it. Why did I think that? So I kept doing research and learning about it, and I was spending all my time doing that instead of learning about education and furthering those skills. And so when COVID happened, I was not okay with masking children for developmental reasons, and I was looking at research. I was not trusting and verifying the research, and I was noticing that kids were not at risk for dying from COVID, and I was looking carefully at the numbers and following that, and I was making that argument, and I told my boss that if they were going to force me to wear a mask, then I was not going to work there. They said I could wear a face shield, and actually changed the requirement a week into school. So she knew if I had to wear a mask, I was gonna quit right before school. They made an agreement that I could wear a face shield, and then once school started and they said I had to wear a mask, that was like a week into school, and I had worked there for a long time and felt terrible. I was like, I'm not gonna leave the school halfway through. I ended up teaching in an army tent or army surplus tent in the woods as a way for me not really having to wear a mask, because it was outside. It was like way away from the school. And so I ended up
That's kind of badass, honestly. That you were like, okay, let's go to the surplus store. We're going to do a tent in the woods. Fuck your masks, people.
They went with the tent route, because they were trying to split up. They thought all the kids in the classroom was too dangerous. And so they split up the classroom.
It's really incredible how people just are, hysterical. Like they haven't looked at a number in their entire life. They're like, oh, 2 digits. This is too complicated, right? Yeah. It's like kids are not at risk. Like outdoor activities are fine.
Yeah, and I think it was partly about social responsibility and taking care of one another. So I see why people went that way, but I also don't think that they were looking at data.
I think it's a performance of that. It's not genuinely that. It was a performance of saying, this shows that I care about my neighbors and the people around me, but actually looking does that actually make a tangible difference?
Right.
That is sort of a different...
People are very bad at making trade-offs where the benefit, where they're very bad at making trade-offs when they're trying to avoid something that's very acutely bad. But maybe that thing that is acutely bad is very rare, and the costs of avoiding that acute bad thing is a lot of diffuse bad things. So, it is true that if you mask kids and masks lower the probability of getting COVID to some degree, then those kids, not that the kids are going to die, but maybe you'll avoid them passing it to their parents or something.
That was the argument.
But on the other hand, we have this really big pile of diffuse costs, the social, mainly I think of social development and quality of social interactions. And I think people are very bad at making those trade-offs and saying, people can't say okay, listen, there's going to be 1 or 2 additional deaths from COVID, but there's a huge pile of reasons of diffuse benefits that we'll get in exchange. And that trade-off is worth it. They're very bad at making those trade-offs.
The analogy I would often like make with people with kids is like, do you still drive in a car with your children?
Right.
Like, do you still drive your kid to school?
Yeah.
Both you in the car and the child in the car, like you are at risk anytime that you're driving anywhere in a car. Just like you're at risk anytime your kid doesn't wear a mask and maybe they'll have whatever, you know.
Not only are you at risk of killing your kid and yourself, you're at the risk of killing somebody else.
Right. And that's always, I mean, that never worked, to be fair, but I tried to sort of like find like a something that we have ingrained in our life where we are taking risk every time every time we drive, we're taking the risk that we will get in an accident. Like those statistics are there. We know that that's a risk, but we still integrate that into our lives because otherwise you're not going to go anywhere.
Right.
But with COVID, I think people couldn't do that.
Yeah. We only sort of accepted the risk of cars actually after a very long amount of time. And when cars were first introduced, they were like, this is crazy, this is dangerous. There were laws in like 1 or 2 places that you needed to have like a signal man who would like precede the car on foot with a sign. Or that you needed you needed a buggy whip, like for weird like reasons. Like,
Yeah. So all that being said, I used that as an excuse to transition into Bitcoin. Okay. And by then I had already made my decision of, I transitioned out of the classroom just halfway through the year instead of leaving them after the first week. Mm-hmm. And so I transitioned out. I worked very part-time because I was also the elementary director of the school. And I was like doing 2 jobs and use the rest of my free time to write for Bitcoin Magazine just as a free contributor, to run my meetup, to just learn about Bitcoin and like run nodes and interact with that. And
have you always been a writer, or was that just sort of like a way that you like, has writing always been like a form of expression for you, or was it like, oh, I have something to say about Bitcoin, I guess I need to write it?
I would say that I think I'm a skilled writer, and I felt that way through school, but it was not necessarily something I connected as being one of my skills.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So I would get good grades on papers and things like that, but I wanted to contribute to Bitcoin somehow, and that seemed like a low-hanging fruit of anybody can submit to Bitcoin Magazine. We're always taking submissions, so if you have a good original idea...
Is there an email address that people should know about?
They can do editor@bitcoinmagazine.com, or... we have a coordinator, so Austin at btcmedia.org.
Mm-hmm. AUSTIN?
AUSTIN, yes.
Nice. Yeah. So you were not like writing articles before and then we're like, oh, I'm going to write articles about Bitcoin. It was like, I have something to say about Bitcoin. I'm going to submit articles to Bitcoin Magazine.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because looking back at my article history, the first one was just like my journey through Bitcoin. Yeah. The second one that I did was about art and how Bitcoin will change the art game. And then I wrote a more technical article on like, here's how you withdraw Bitcoin from an exchange. Here's how you run a node. Here's how you set up a mining rig at home.
Right.
Very detailed, like you need this cable, you need this cord, you need to access your miner through here. Yeah. And so it's like, I'm interested in both the cultural side and the tech side. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of figuring out like where I fit, where that inspiration is in the moment, what to write about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Isabel, whose hotel room we're so graciously using, wrote an article for Bitcoin Magazine in the fall, I think, that was about her journey from being like raised as like a progressive, Marxist even sort of leftist to like having this like existential crisis of like, wait, why does Elizabeth Warren hate Bitcoin? I think Bitcoin might be awesome. And then kind of like becoming a Bitcoiner.
Yeah, I actually edited that article.
Nice, yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where so it took a while before I got a job in the industry. It took a full year. And during that time, I dipped into my Bitcoin savings. I took out Bitcoin-backed loans. And so now that I have a job, I'm like in the process of like...
Stacking back up,
exactly.
Yeah. Bitcoin Magazine is really interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Bitcoin Magazine was founded by Vitalik Buterin.
Really?
That is correct.
That's right. Pre-Ethereum, Vitalik was a Bitcoiner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know the company gets a lot of flack for that, but it's funny because he has no connection to the company any longer. And I believe the company wasn't doing well, and it was like because he I guess started Ethereum, and it was kind of like the attention was divided. I don't actually know how the company was acquired and sold and things like that, but there's no relation. And actually in 2018, the company made a blog post, still not doing very well because the post was not on bitcoinmagazine.com. They made a Medium post about how they're going to make Bitcoin fun again and be Bitcoin only. And so at this point, we're very much Bitcoin only.
Right.
Publication.
Yeah.
How big? So you work remotely, right? Because Bitcoin Magazine is headquartered in Nashville, but you are in Asheville.
Correct.
How big is the company at this point? Like,
it's grown a lot. I believe it's around 100 employees.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's so many different departments.
It's really interesting because like I assume like the conference is the big source of revenue. Like
I believe so.
Right,
yes.
but then the print magazine is still a thing.
Yeah. So
and even if the print magazine didn't make much money, it's like, well, like the cost of keep doing the print magazine is the cost of not having to rebrand from calling yourself Bitcoin Magazine.
I'm sure there's other reasons we're doing the print magazine.
I'm sure it's great. The articles are incredible.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's the print side. There's the online side, which is where I focus. The online side.
Yeah, you and Mark's on the print side.
Correct.
Mark Goodwin, friend of the pod.
We'll have him on at some point.
Yeah, he's like a print editor and you're like an online editor.
Correct.
That's cool. How do the two sides of the business differ?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's way more sides. There's that and the conference, and then there's a multimedia side.
What's the multimedia side?
They do a live stream daily.
Oh, like a Twitter space?
They do Twitter Spaces, but it's not just Twitter Spaces.
I think
Twitter. I think they stream through Twitter, but it's also video.
That was like what we watched CK on before he came on our podcast.
I don't know if I watched that. Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're not bullish enough.
Yeah. CK was giving his he's not bullish enough. He was just like arguing and he was like making his point. The other person started to make their point back, and then CK just walked away from the camera, and apparently had his headphones on, but the guy was like, and he's just walking away. He's not even
I'm not even gonna listen to this.
Yeah.
You're just not bullish
perfect.
enough. Yeah. So there's a ton of different avenues in the company, and the print side. Are you asking about how the print side differs from the online side? Is that
Yeah.
So the print side aims for more higher profile writers, but I mean, any pleb can still submit an article to the North Star, the theme of the publication, and it's they typically have more longer form pieces as well, and it's a different market. I met somebody at Bitcoin Day in Charlotte he was an older gentleman. He is a subscriber of the magazine. He has never went to the website. No interest in the conference, but he subscribes to the magazine.
That's really cool. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah.
And so we try to host many varying opinions about Bitcoin on both the print and online side. As long as people back up their opinion. We have stuff from progressives. We have stuff from libertarians, technical stuff, cultural pieces. Yeah. We just had an article about doxing where this person was suggesting that it is okay to dox people, which is not the stance of the magazine or us as editors and individuals. Right. But we want to host people's ideas that might not be popular as long as they're Bitcoin only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's very cool. Mm. Everyone that I know from Bitcoin Magazine, I love.
Yeah.
CK, Mark, you.
Shit. Oh, God.
What did you do?
I fucking funny bone. Oh, my God. Oh, it hurts so bad. It hurts so bad.
Was that on the luggage thing? Or
no, it was on that.
Ouch. Wow, how are you this incapacitated by this?
Oh, God.
Do you have a low pain threshold?
No, it hurts really bad. It hurts really bad.
All right, we'll give him a second.
Ooh. In Swedish, it's called a widow shock.
A widow shock?
Yeah.
Why?
I have no fucking
widow,
clue.
Like a dead spouse? Or
yeah,
like a black
dead spouse.
Widow?
No, widow shock. Yeah.
Why? Because it hurts that bad?
I have no fucking idea. Okay, I'm coming back.
Oh, you're definitely never giving birth then.
No. Yeah, I know. No. It's revealing.
No, it hurts really bad. I'm really a high pain, pain threshold guy. Okay, I'm back. What were we talking about?
I was just saying that I love everyone from Bitcoin Magazine. You're going to be in Nashville in September.
Yeah.
Are you going to
Nashville? I am going to Nashville.
Because it's the meetup of meetups. Yeah, it's the meta meetup.
The organizer meetup.
Yeah. Yeah, I host the SF Bitcoin Devs. I think I told you that. SF Bitcoin Devs meetup. Yeah, and I'm so happy that I get an excuse to go to like an exclusive conference. Yeah. Yeah.
Invite only.
Invite only. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
I want to see Bitcoin Park. I've heard a lot about Bitcoin Park.
It is so cool.
Yeah.
It's funny because they moved the meetup to that location, and then they announced Bitcoin Park after there was already one meetup there that I went to, and I did not connect the fact that it was at the new location. That was actually Bitcoin Park. So I was like, I can't wait to go to Bitcoin Park, and then I went to the next meetup, and I was like, oh, this is Bitcoin Park. I've been here. Like, it's great. But it's really cool because there's co-working offices there. There's like a podcast studio. I think that's where Odell does his podcast. There's this really nice like spot to meet up, and it's got a big patio. It's really nice.
Dope.
Every one of their meetups is like a mini conference anyway.
Right.
People travel from all over.
There are a few of those. I think the two that I think of that people really travel to is BitDevs Austin, and then the Nashville Bitcoin meetup. People don't really travel to the BitDevs New York. BitDevs New York is definitely a big meetup, but I haven't heard of people going from out of town for that.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I travel almost monthly to Nashville, and then it gives me an excuse to go to the office, which is fun to like see people in person. But really, I'm just going for the meetup.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. How many people work in person at the Nashville office?
I don't know. It's not a ton.
Not a ton. Yeah. I mean, it's nice that there's kind of like the combination of like some sort of headquarters somewhere, but then you can also just like do your thing and live off the land outside of Asheville.
I think the story of Bitcoin Magazine coming back from the brink is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like that they weren't doing well, right? And then they just like focused on Bitcoin and like put in the work, and then now like they're huge, right? They're a big media org.
I think that's been the most fascinating thing about this particular bear market, where, you know, left and right, my father-in-law is still like reaching out to me about like even though I've explained it to him, he's like, but tell me about all these crypto companies blowing up. And it's like, well, they engaged in really risky business practices. They were lending out client funds that was being leveraged in this way, and like they're all this interconnected risk. And then they all are collapsing, and we're seeing Bitcoin companies hiring right now. Bitcoin only companies are like still hiring. They're still growing, and that's because Bitcoin there's something different about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, and that's why we're at BitBlockBoom. That's why we're Bitcoin maxis.
Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. You have somewhere to be, right?
No, just seems like a good stopping point.
Yeah,
that's why we're in Bitcoin.
Yes, absolutely.
Before we go, do you want to shill your Twitter or shill anything in particular?
Sure. So I am on Twitter at Bitcoin_fan with a PH.
Because you're a fish fan.
Yeah. I am also fully doxxed, so Craig, you can also just find me by searching my name, Craig Deutsch. I'm working on the Bitcoin game. I will be raising funds for it once it is like fully ready.
Yeah. So DGen Bitcoin board game enthusiasts.
Yes.
Get in touch with this man.
Yeah.
Get on the ground floor.
Always happy to get feedback on it and just brainstorm ideas. I've gotten tons of great ideas from people in the community.
Dope.
Have the meetup group, Asheville Bitcoiners.
Oh, cool, yeah.
So anybody in the areas.
Asheville, North Carolina.
Yes.
There's also an Asheville, Oregon, right?
Ashland.
Yeah.
That would be the ideal target for the next place that Bitcoin Magazine expands to or hires, right? You want to get all the Ash cities.
Yeah. So those are the places you can find me. And yeah.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
For having me on.
Yeah, thanks for chatting with us.
Yeah,
Craig.
thanks for hanging out.
It. Yeah, looking forward to hanging the rest of the weekend. Signing off.
Cool. Signing off from BitBlockBoom. See you next time.
Bye.